May 5, 1943, 01:42 hours. North Atlantic fog presses against steel, and a convoy breathes in the dark like a sleeping city at sea. On the escort's radio desk, a faint click. 2 seconds, maybe 3. The man in headphones doesn't blink. He lifts a finger. The room holds its breath. Outside, cold spray rattles the bridge windows. In these seconds, groceries and gasoline and letters home are riding on, whether someone heard a whisper fast enough. If you've ever waited for a paycheck, stood in line for milk, or counted the miles until a loved one comes home, this night is about you. A world at war lives or dies on what gets across this ocean. If this kind of "what if the ocean could talk" history grips you, hit subscribe to What If Wars so you don't miss the next chapter. The whisper comes again, short, high frequency, gone as soon as it arrives. A needle swings on a box that looks too simple to change a war. Bearing 062, the operator says, voice low, steady. A runner bolts, rubber soles hammering down steel ladders. On the plot table, a grease pencil scratches a straight line into the Atlantic. Another escort's watch officer glances up at the compass repeater and notes the convoy's course and speed. Above the chart room, the ship's screws deepen, a rough new note rolling through the hull as the captain nudges her forward. Tonight's promise is simple. Somewhere out there, a contact boat has seen the convoy and tried to call its brothers. A Wolfpack can only bite in numbers. It hunts by gathering. One spotter, many killers. Break the assembly, and you've broken the attack before a torpedo even loads. The second promise runs quieter. The device that makes this possible doesn't fire a shot. It just listens. If the timing is right, it bends the curve of the entire war. The air smells like oil and damp wool. The chart room is warm from bodies and lamps, but everyone keeps their collars up. A quartermaster slices a ruler across the bearing line and taps a point where it crosses the convoy's projected track. If he stays up, someone says, meaning if the U-boat remains on the surface to talk. That's the gamble. Wolves loved the night, running fast on the skin of the sea where their diesels could breathe, sneaking alongside until they were close enough to slip in and launch. They hunted as a pack because one submarine alone could be outmaneuvered. A pack, cued by radio, could swamp the escorts and rip open the middle. But radio is a double-edged thing. In 1943, every burst to summon the pack is also a flare without light, an invisible shout that says, "I am here," to anyone who knows how to hear. And tonight, men on ships and men on shore are hearing. In coastal listening posts far behind the fog, operators have caught that same little burst, each station jotting down a bearing. Lines on distant maps are crossing toward a rough box in the ocean. On this escort, the needle swing gives instant direction, shore to sea, sea to shore. The lines are converging in real time, and the trick is speed. The runner is back. "Possible cross-bearing inbound," he says, breath clouding the lamplight. The officer of the watch checks his time. "We've got 60 seconds, he says, more to himself than to the room. 60 seconds to believe the line, detach a ship, and push a black shape through a blacker sea toward a voice no one can see. 60 seconds to ruin a meeting that hasn't happened yet. "Signal the starboard escort," the captain says from the bridge, eyes never leaving the horizon. "Come right 5 degrees, increase to 16 knots. The helmsman answers. Somewhere forward, the bow punches clean through a heavier swell and sends cold needles of spray skating along the deck. The lookout coughs into his scarf and stares into the kind of dark that makes you blink just to make sure your eyes are open. Down below, the headphones man keeps listening. The burst could come again. The Germans know to keep it short now, just a few seconds at a time, but habits and need betray them. When a contact boat finds a convoy, the pressure to speak is like thirst. If he gets the word out, the wolves will slide in from the flanks, midnight shapes, wake lines barely visible, and within an hour the sea will be cut with white scars. Men will shout bearings and bearings back, and somewhere, a ship carrying flour, or tanks, or 180 soldiers will feel its spine snap. The plot team watches the pencil line, like it might move on its own. The messenger's pencil drums a nervous beat against his clipboard. A petty officer licks a thumb and smooths a curl of chart that keeps springing up from the edge. "If he's smart, he's already down," someone mutters. "If he's smart, he never called at all," someone else shoots back. But the faintest smile touches the radio man's mouth. He heard what he heard. The bearing line is not a promise. It is a chance. It is a hand in the dark reaching for another hand and guessing where the knuckles are by the sound of breathing. This is the part of the war nobody sees in posters. No explosions, no medals in the moment, just seconds and choices. Just whether the line on the map can get there before the next whisper. The bridge door creaks. Wind slaps in. "Cross-bearing confirmed," the runner says, cheeks bright from the cold. The officer draws the second line with a quick, sure stroke. The X on the chart is small, almost nothing. Still, the room leans toward it, as if the pencil had found gravity. This is where the story chokes on its own quiet. The captain's hand hovers over the voice pipe. One more order, and a single escort will peel out. Faster, louder, riskier, making itself a decoy and a knife at once. If they're right, the contact boat dives, mouth closed, and the pack never finds the front door. If they're wrong, the convoy's guard thins and darkness gets teeth. "Stand by to detach," the captain says. Year 0, Zerts. WWII. The signal hits. By 01:46, a decision will either save a convoy or feed the ocean. 01:46 hours. Orders move faster than the ship. In Liverpool, in a dim room under Western Approach's command, a duty officer leans over a big Atlantic plot. He has 3 thin lines from 3 shore stations, Anglesey, Malin Head, and a point farther north, crisscrossing on the paper sea. Each came from a burst that barely lasted a breath. Triangulation makes a rough box, not a pinpoint. 20, maybe 30 square miles of cold water, where a contact boat likely breathed on the surface and spoke too long. A clerk stamps the time. A teleprinter chatters a message toward the open ocean. Out at sea, the escort's HFDF has already given a direction, bold and simple as a finger pointing in the night. The watch officer doesn't wait for perfect. Perfect misses windows. He marries that bearing to the convoy's course, the wind, and the sea state chalked on a slate by the bridge wing. He wants an intercept, not a chase. "Detaching starboard escort," the signalman flags across the dark. The answer lamp blinks, a quiet affirmation between ships that can't risk a radio chat. Below, the plotting table is alive. The coxswain reads out speed over ground. The navigator sketches the convoy's predicted position by 02 Oro, 0210, 0220, small pencil ships inching forward. The bearing line is drawn through that track, and a grease circle marks the segment where an intercept has teeth. A runner with the shore box bursts in. The officer lays it over the chart. The 2 worlds, shore triangulation and shipboard bearing, kiss edges. Probability hardens. "Go," says the captain, and the detached escort lifts her bow and sprints, black water clapping the plates. Friction arrives with the sea. The ship rolls. The HFDF needle can flutter when the antenna sways. The headphones man compensates, listening for a second microburst to steady the reading. German discipline has improved. Shorter transmissions, different hours, sometimes a change in frequency, but urgency is a tyrant. A contact boat that sees a convoy at night wants the pack now. He risks 5 seconds, maybe 8. That's everything. On shore, one station misses it. Too much static. A storm front corrupting the trace. Another catches it clean. 2 bearings still cross. Good enough. The operations loop breathes in 1-minute lungs. In the nerve centers, Liverpool for the Western Approaches, Washington's new U.S. 10th Fleet beginning its strange life as a fleet with no ships, the graph of the North Atlantic is a living thing. Blips, lines, patrol zones, HFDF reports, radar sightings, U-boat habitual routes inferred from weeks of listening and reading patterns. They don't steer every helm. They set tempo. A message goes to a long-range aircraft warming on a cold runway. Be ready to stretch a patrol leg toward the box at first light. Another goes to a hunter-killer element farther west, to watch a different gate if the pack tries to edge around. Here, the sea is too big to control, but time can be trapped. On the detached escort, speed trades with stealth. 16 knots become 18. The bridge crew can feel the hull's vibration change pitch. On the surface, a U-boat is fast. Submerged, she is slow and deaf. If you make him dive early, you steal his minutes and his hearing in one move. The escort's radar pings a thin echo. Sea clutter, maybe. The gunnery officer asks for a check. The radar man shakes his head. The beam struggles in mist. "Hold bearing," the captain says. The plan is simple. Thread the bearing line until the escort's wake crosses the spot where a mouth just spoke. Here is where the math meets muscle. A lookout whispers, dark shape, starboard quarter, low. The officer of the deck resists the urge to turn toward a ghost. A premature swing can give a U-boat the clear angle it needs to slip away. Instead, the captain orders a small course correction to keep the bearing on the bow. Down below, sonar listens. Nothing yet. On the chart, the grease X is under the ship's nose. "Ready starboard throwers," a voice calls, not to fire, to be ready to threaten. Pressure is a weapon. Even a hint of an approach can make the contact boat take the only sure option, down. Some nights, error bars win. Bearing lines wobble. Radio interference eats a burst. You hunt a ghost and bring back nothing but tired men and a deck glazed with salt. Tonight, the second burst comes. Thin as a hair, longer by a heartbeat. The HFDF needle swings the same. Shore stations catch it again. The box tightens. The escort knifes through the center of that silent square. A bow wave climbs. A lookout hears the low growl of diesels change to a deeper note, as if a subway dove under a city. "He's diving," someone says, not a shout. More like a prayer said backward. The sea ahead dimples and smooths, no periscope, no wake. Just the feel, like the ocean inhaled. The captain holds his fire. Depth charges now would be noise for the convoy and a story for later. The real target was never a kill. It was a call. The minute the boat went under, his antenna fell silent. The assembly message died unfinished. The wolves still out there cannot gather on time or in place. They will trickle in, confused, late, from bad angles against a convoy that refuses to be still. Somewhere back on the main body, the flagship notes, "Probable contact, forced to dive, comms denied." It is a small sentence that sounds like paperwork. It is, in truth, a jaw snapping shut on empty air. And there is the mini payoff you can't film, but you can feel. A phone that doesn't ring, a meeting that never happens, a mouth closed by a ship's shadow. The line on the chart has cut the pack's spine. May 4th, 1943, North Atlantic, the week of ONS 5. The barometer slumps and the sky is a lid of wet iron. The convoy runs dark, a slow constellation with its stars hooded. The sea stacks in long black ribs. On the lead escort, the bridge smells of canvas and coffee gone bitter on a hot plate. Watches turn over with a whisper and a nod. The helmsman flexes stiff fingers and keeps the bow slewing true. Liu Bao's Aozhou 20. The burst arrives like a pin-tapping glass. 2, 3 seconds, unclipped, impatient. The radio man's jaw tightens. He cups the earphones and says, "Signal." The HFDF needle slides right, overshoots, settles. Bearing 062. His pencil leaves a dot on a torn scrap he keeps tucked beside the set. Habit more than need. Down in the chart house, a grease pencil drags a sure line across the convoy's projected path. The officer of the watch says nothing, only checks his time, 01:53, and lays a finger on the map as if to pin the ocean in place. A020:060. A messenger clatters through with a damp slip from the bridge wing. Wind west-northwest, 25 knots, swell building, visibility poor. Another man angles a ruler across the bearing, and the convoy track marks a rough intercept. Shoreside confirmation buzzes up the voice pipe, a second bearing from a Y station farther north. The lines kiss near a small, mean patch of water. The captain steps in, coat open, eyes raw from wind. "One boat on the surface," the officer says. "If he calls again..." He doesn't finish. The captain nods once. The messenger's boots hammer back down the ladder. Outside, spray hisses and a cold bead runs under the collar of a lookout, who doesn't twitch to wipe it away. 01 Ozar, Ozor. The starboard escort surges. Engines open, screws bite, the deck hum jumps half a note like a string tightened. The captain keeps the bearing on the bow, not chasing a ghost, but threading a needle. "Darken ship," the officer of the deck calls, and the bridge dims to a cave with windows. A lamp is hooded with a palm. A signalman's hands, cracked and salted white at the knuckles, flicker a curt acknowledgement toward the convoy flagship. Detaching to investigate. On the plotting table, the The convoy's little pencil ships crawl forward. The bearing line crosses them and keeps going into the box. The sonar man listens to empty. The radar sweeps thin, finds weather, loses it. The compass repeater ticks in a small, lonely way. 03006 Zerors. The sea slaps harder. The escort shoulders through, taking water green over the bow and sending it rattling along the deck like a bag of gravel. A faint diesel note rides the wind and then goes away. Or someone imagines it. On shore, another Y station gets a sliver of the next burst. The operator curses static and writes the angle anyway. In Liverpool, the duty officer drifts a fingertip over a narrowing box. He can taste the cheap tea cooling at his elbow and the ink of the night clerk's pen. At sea, the bearing holds. Steady, the captain won't be tricked into turning early. To starboard, the second escort slides wider, a door closing. The first shows her teeth, white water, and speed. 06 Zrain Sabisp 30. A new noise vibrates up through the deck plates. Not wind, not sea, not the ship's own voice. It is more absence than sound, a hollowing. The U-boat's diesels dip and vanish, and the ocean swallows a gulp of dark. He's down, the sonar man breathes, instinct before contact. The captain counts under his breath. 2, 3, 4, then holds his fire. A pattern now would be blind anger, and a story for men who weren't here. The job was never to kill him for sport. It was to close his mouth before morning. 07:30 10 Riums. A flare burns low on the horizon. Someone in the convoy testing a gun crew's eyes or a trick of fatigue making weather into light. The radar paints a smear and shrugs it off. The escort circles once, not tight enough to lose the bearing line, just enough to taunt the dark. Down below, the chart edge curls and the petty officer smooths it flat with the side of his hand. The navigator plots the boat's likely drift submerged, slow, blind, stubborn. He'll try to sneak under us and surface astern, someone says. He'll try to breathe, someone else answers, and they let the words hang like frost. 10 de bows 12, or... On the convoy's port quarter, a merchantman's screw beats uneven. The liaison officer listens, gauges whether a lagging freighter will open a seam in the formation. He murmurs on the voice pipe. The flagship answers with a note to hold course and patch the hole with a trawler-turned escort. The pack needs a map with a pin. Without it, they hunt noise and rumor. Minutes stretch elastic and then snap. 12, Wand 15, Desertist. An isolated U-boat, late to a party that never formed, lifts her head into sleet and sees nothing but churned wake. No Mercury trail of ships running too even, no sloppy silhouette. The sea is a field of moving dark squares. He risks 4 seconds to call a position, short, clipped, almost a heartbeat, and the escorts on the fringe catch it like a moth wing hitting a window. Bearings cross a little too late and a little too far. He chooses to live, not to help. He angles away and eats water. The pack, somewhere out there, arrives in ones and twos, out of step, out of faith. Back on the lead escort, the bridge loosens by inches. Shoulders drop. No one says safe. The captain comes down and puts a finger on the small X on the chart. The grease smears. He rubs it off with a knuckle and leaves a clean emptiness where a meeting should have been. The messenger leans against the bulkhead, closes his eyes, tastes the wire sour of adrenaline fading. The radio man hangs his headset on its hook with the care of someone putting a sleeping child to bed. A sailor on the lee wing cups a match from the wind and fails, smiles anyway, and listens to the ocean. Not the roar. He listens for the heartbeat under it, the clock tick you only hear when you stand still and the sea decides to speak. Sounds like it's counting for us tonight, he says to no one. He tucks his hands back into his sleeves and watches black water turn to a lighter shade of black. What happens when the pack adapts, he asks, almost to the horizon, and the ship answers by keeping its course. May 6th, 1943, just after midnight. The weather has turned mean and personal, the kind that steals words from your mouth. Out on the convoy's rim, the port escort rides the troughs like a boxer slipping punches. Men have learned the rhythm of this ocean, but the enemy has learned too. Ilodabo 30. The first call is a ghost, 1 second only, a frequency they haven't used in weeks. The HFDF needle twitches, too quick to settle. On shore, a Y station farther south snags a sliver and curses the rest. The Germans have tightened discipline, shorter bursts, stricter windows, hopping bands like stones over a creek. A dummy call follows. 2 seconds. A hair off the convoy's true bearing. It's bait. The chart house doesn't bite. 030 1D. Hold, the captain says. He wants repetition, not a reflex. A second microburst snaps through the static, this time on the original band. The HFDF needle swings the same way as before, steadier by a breath. Confirm, the officer of the watch says, and a runner is already halfway down the ladder to the radio shack. On the plotting table, 2 faint pencil marks become a line. The ship keeps her bow on it, not chasing, just aligning, like a hammer drawn back over a nail. 01:30:03 hours. In Liverpool, the Western Approaches duty officer glances at a board with colored pins that smell of brass and sweat. The box tonight is longer, thinner. German timing meant it that way. He draws it anyway. Across the ocean in Washington, the U.S. 10th Fleet's small staff watches their own map breathe. They can't steer an escort with a fingertip, but they can shape the next hour. A message rattles out to a patrol aircraft staged farther west. Launch at first gray and sweep the top of that box. Another message threads to a hunter-killer pair prowling a side lane. Hold a gate. If wolves skirt high, make them pay. 03 low omfav. Oh, sub. The port escort slows a hair, lets her screws bite clean to reduce her own electrical noise. The radar warms to full power and begins to paint the air with a wavelength the U-boats hate. Centimetric. The kind that pulls surface shapes out of night like secrets from a friend. A smear appears, disappears, appears again. Not weather. Range decreasing, the radar man says, soft as if speaking louder might scare the echo off the screen. The captain doesn't turn toward it. He lengthens along the bearing instead, making the U-boat's best option the one he hates. Down. EO5 x6 at 30. The German commander plays his hand with care. 3 1-second bursts spaced 90 seconds apart, a pattern drilled into bone. Somewhere behind him in the dark, another boat sends a burst from a safer distance, trying to craft a false center for the pack. But pattern is a flag once you've seen it enough. The HFDF team has listened to nights like this for months. The shore station stitched the space slivers into a thread, and the thread points to the boat that matters, the contact that must be silenced, not the decoy that wants attention. 06 and 30, 08, there are. The escort shows her shadow. She lifts onto a swell and throws a ridge of white that says speed and intent. No rockets, no guns, not yet. Just presence. Sonar wakes and murmurs, nothing firm. The captain holds off on charges. He wants the dive, not the kill. He wants the radio mast to meet water. The trick is cruel and clean. Make the enemy choose life over duty, lungs over language. The U-boat commander hears screws he doesn't like and takes his boat under. It's the right call for his crew. It's the wrong call for the pack. 08 Esgorten 30. Air cover arrives early by a miracle of fuel calculations and a tailwind that favors the living. A twin-engine patrol plane skims low, engines a steady iron reassurance. Its radar sniffs a shape and throws a flare into the clouds, not to light a target so much as to paint the sky with a warning. You are seen. Wolves that were thinking about surfacing to talk decide to wait. Waiting is how you lose a timetable. 10:30, 13 starts. The nerve centers breathe with the ships. A signal snakes back from the escort. Contact likely forced to submerge. Assembly disrupted. The Western Approaches moves 3 pins on the board, not for spectacle, for geometry. The 10th Fleet's watch notes a pattern repeating across days. Short calls, early dives, packs arriving like late trains. They don't cheer, they adjust. Orders fan outward, minor course changes, altitude for the aircraft. A hunter-killer leg another 30 miles to the north. The ocean is a web, and tonight the web is time. In 13:16 for souls. The Germans try a last trick. A dummy flare blooms where no ship should be. A little theater at the edge of vision. The escort refuses the invitation. The radar's centimetric eye sees through the act. The captain keeps the bearing, lets the flare burn itself out on its own oxygen. A late-arriving U-boat slides up to check the splash and finds nothing but cold fire and rumor. He dives again, alone. The twist sneaks up at deck level. No one cheers for a silence. There's no headline for meeting canceled, but men on the bridge feel it in their bones. The weapon here isn't a shell or a torpedo. It's the minute the enemy never gets. Deny those minutes, and the night belongs to the side that can wait with purpose. By dawn, the convoy is still a moving city, tired, wet, intact. The wolves, out of rhythm, circle themselves. A boatswain wipes rain from his face and grins without humor. They're fast, he says. We're faster where it counts. The captain doesn't answer. He studies the horizon that has taken too much from too many and gives back nothing but a paler stripe. He thinks about the week, about how often the bearings have held and how often choices have landed like a hand on the right door. The calendar turns its page inside the ship's log. May 1943, a month that will teach even hunters to fear the clock. Next comes the ledger, the numbers that make men in distant rooms sit down hard. And then the morning that feels different on the skin, when a crewman exhales and realizes he's been holding his breath for half a year. May 31st, 1943, just before dawn. The ledger for the month lies open in rooms far from the sea, and the numbers make even the confident go quiet. Across May, the Atlantic turns on its hinges. U-boats go down by the dozens, crews captured shivering in oil-slick water, periscopes missing from places they once owned. Convoy losses plunge. Ships that carry wheat, fuel, steel, and letters shoulder through and make landfall. Men step onto docks and breathe, not because the war is over, but because the tide finally moved. This isn't luck, it's tempo. It's the minute the enemy didn't get. In Liverpool's western approaches, pins are shifted with a steadier hand. In Washington, the U.S. 10th Fleet makes a strange kind of music without a single hull, collecting signals, shaping time, handing the sea back to escorts and aircraft who do the touching. The pattern is clear now. Night after night, the call that should have knitted wolves into a wall is cut off mid-stitch. Packs arrive ragged or not at all. The convoy, once a herd waiting for teeth, moves like a guarded city with curfews and patrols, always a step ahead of whoever tries the door. Remember the promise from the first night, the 60-second decision that would either save a convoy or feed the ocean. You've watched it play out in quiet rooms and wet bridges. A bearing called with a mouth that didn't tremble, a pencil line scored fast and sure, a captain detaching a single ship into a darker dark, a U-boat's commander hearing screws and choosing depth and breath over duty and radio. That single minute repeats across the month like a hidden drumbeat. Every time it lands, a meeting fails to happen, and every meeting that fails to happen is a torpedo never loaded, a hole never ripped, a long black telegram no one has to deliver, and the other promise, the near-silent device that doesn't shoot. It sits on a cramped desk and swings its needle like a weather vane that only knows danger. It doesn't thunder, it doesn't flash, it doesn't give speeches, it listens. Shipboard HFDF on the escorts, shore HFDF in cold huts where operators drink bad tea and mark angles under bare bulbs. Together, they turn whispers into arrows. They give commanders the courage to act before proof becomes wreckage. In May, their quiet work becomes visible only by the absence it creates. Streets that don't flood when the siren wails. Empty hospital beds in ports that used to brace for the worst. 1,000 dinners that taste like relief. Somewhere off the Grand Banks, an escort eases back from a sprint. The captain rubs a smear off the chart and leaves the corner of his thumb black with grease pencil. He thinks of all the nights that looked like failure because they made no noise. He thinks of the crewmen who said the ocean sounded like a clock counting for them. He steps onto the bridge wing and lets the wind slap him awake. The sky is a weak gray, the kind that belongs to men who outlasted a long, mean shift. Down the line, a long-range aircraft turns for home on fumes and goodwill. A hunter-killer pair holds a gate no one tries tonight. A shore station operator flexes cramped fingers and whispers the bearing angles to himself, as if they were prayers he doesn't want to forget. A merchant sailor in the convoy's middle writes a letter he'll actually get to send. We saw flares that weren't ours, and we kept going. By month's end, the enemy does the math too. Orders shift. Boats are pulled back from the North Atlantic. The wolves don't stop existing. They stop ruling. The ocean becomes a place you can cross again. Without rolling dice, you can't afford to lose. There will still be ambushes, still be names carved into brass. But the center of the fight has slipped. The hunters have to learn a new world where minutes are expensive and silence is dangerous. And the hunted have learned to hear. At first light, the convoy is a worn-out galaxy. Decks shine with salt. Men swallow coffee that tastes like rust and gratitude. A boatswain passes a dented tin to a kid who hasn't learned how to pretend he isn't scared. The kid drinks, winces, and laughs at nothing. The wind flattens the laugh and carries it away. The captain looks down the long, stubborn line of ships. He knows this isn't the end of anything. It's the end of a chapter that began with long lists of losses and ends with the sound of a pencil on a map and a decision made in under a minute. He thinks about the device that didn't shoot and the nights it changed everything by saying almost nothing. He thinks about the pack that could have been here and isn't. The bridge quiets as the sun clears the rim. It's not much of a sunrise, more a pale admission that day exists, but it lands on faces that have earned it. Someone on the lee wing says, "We were prey." Someone else answers, "We learned to hear the hunters." No one argues. The convoy lifts and settles, lifts and settles, like a city breathing again after a long time holding its breath. Black May is just a name on a calendar. What it felt like was a door closing that had been open too long. What it meant was a chance for the ordinary to get through. Flour sacks, spare parts, mail. The kind of victory that tastes like bread and sleep. The ocean keeps its secrets. Tonight, it kept the right ones. The content of this video was compiled from multiple sources. If anything is inaccurate or needs correction, please comment below. See you next time.